This is a response to a review of the corrected King James Version on Amazon. Normally, I don't do this. There are other reviews I'm not responding to right now. But I've had a few projects that went a little bigger than I thought they would lately, and then I had some plumbing problems. More on that in an upcoming post. So I needed a post I could write in a couple of hours. I had an idea, that forthcoming post on my plumbing problems that I mentioned before, but it turned out to take longer than expected, so then I needed something I knew for a fact could be done in an hour. So here you go. Generally speaking, I consider negative Amazon reviews to be the coward's way out. I have a blog. They could ask about their concerns here and I would answer. But I get how that's scary for some people. I usually prefer to honor that fear and leave them be. But this was quick and easy, and I needed quick and easy. There is a common misunderstanding among people that have heard about Hebrew Matthew that the late Dr. George Howard proved that the version of Matthew preserved in Even Bowen was the most accurate version of Matthew. This isn't true. That's not even what Dr. Howard was trying to prove. Dr. Howard was trying to demonstrate that Even Bowen preserved some readings from the original Matthew in Hebrew. But on page 182, Even Drive Howard says, instances of revision occur in Shem Tov's text. I think Dr. Howard did an excellent job at demonstrating that the Hebrew text behind Shem Tov comes from earlier days of the church. The problem comes in when people expect his book to be something it's not, expecting Shem Tov to be the authoritative version of Matthew uncritically. One of the points where I think Dr. Howard got things backwards is that Dr. Howard thinks that Even Bowen preserves more correct readings than the Paris manuscript. I disagree. This isn't entirely Dr. Howard's fault. At the time, exploring manuscripts that hadn't been published took going to the location of the manuscript or ordering microfilm. Everyone thought that there were only 3 complete streams for this family of Matthew in Hebrew: Even Bowen preserved by Shem Tov, the Paris manuscript, discovered by Dutillot, and the edition copied by Munster. Even I thought that, until 2019 when I decided to pull together my notes for why I think that Matthew was written in Hebrew. One of my notes said simply, I suspect that there are other manuscripts. I've read descriptions of a Hebrew Matthew in Prague. Someone should look into that. When I read that note, it occurred to me that I'm someone. I had already found Dutillot's edition on Google Books and Munster's on the Internet Archive. A quick search found scans of the microfilm for Dutillot's manuscript on the Hebrew University website. I never did find scans of the manuscript from Prague, but I did find the British Museum manuscript and another printed edition from the Middle Ages that both obviously belonged to the family. My casual observation as I've compared a few random passages has been that these match with Munster or the Paris manuscript more often than with Shem Tov. They also had enough alternation between which they agree with or unique readings to suggest that they are independent of either. This didn't surprise me. Frankly, it wouldn't have surprised me if it worked out the other way, either. I entered that question with more curiosity than expectation. But I already knew that Shem Tov had brought in a section of Mark, had sections that matched the prevailing Latin against the rest of the family, and had made orthographic changes such as giving the Greek name for Peter instead of the Aramaic name Kepha. Discovering that his changes were unreliable and inconsistent was in line with those facts. This, among other things, is why I prefer the Paris manuscript over Shem Tov. So there's a certain ignorant, basic truth to what Kevin Taylor says when he includes a photo of the corrected King James Version and Howard's translation of Matthew 24 verse 40 side by side in his review. Dr. Howard does include righteous in the text. I do not. I do reference Dr. Howard's work in the preface, but I also note that I differ from Dr. Howard on some points. But there's a reason that I don't include righteous in this verse. My source, the Paris manuscript, doesn't include righteous in this verse. Dr. Howard's source, Shem Tov, does. The Hebrew of this verse from the Paris manuscript reads,
אז יהיו שנים בשדה אחד ילקח ואחד יעזב.
The Hebrew of this verse from Shem Tov reads,
אז אם יהיו שנים חורשים בסמים אחד האחד צדים ואחד רשע האחד ילכד ואחד יעזב. There are a few differences that are just the differences of hand copying. There are even a few differences like that in the Shem Tov tradition. It's notable that there are also a lot of similarities that suggest a common source. But the one righteous and the one wicked isn't in the Paris manuscript. It's also not in Munster's edition. It's also not in the British Museum manuscript. There's an note on this in the margin of Johannes Quincarberius' edition suggesting they saw this reading. It doesn't appear anywhere except in the Shem Tov line. So when you come down to OAT, Kevin Taylor is complaining that I'm not following George Howard or Shem Tov in a place where the evidence suggests that Shem Tov is setting his own interpretation of the text. I'm not really a text critic, and if a text critic wants to assemble the family and apply the rules of textual criticism, I think they will discover that I've translated this verse correctly. But I'm open to correction. If someone assembles the family and creates a text critical version that does include this portion of the text, and the reasons are sound and in line with the rules of textual criticism, then I will gladly change my translation to match. Overall, Imar Taylor has done something that I've always tried to avoid doing. He's made a comment about the correctness of what someone else has done without understanding why it was done that way. He incorrectly assumed that I was using Shem Tov as a Moai base text. He incorrectly assumed that Dr. Howard presented the inauthoritative Hebrew Matthew. Personally, I have usually found that a better strategy is to ask questions. I've seen translations that I disagree with, and I reach out to those more knowledge than me and ask, why was it translated that way? I may still disagree with the decision, but if I can't articulate their reasons, then I don't actually know if their reasons are wrong or not. The next time you are preparing to decide if someone is right or wrong, make sure you understand their reasons before commenting. As a wise man once said, it is better to remain silent and be thoughtful than to open your mouth and remove all doubt.